I'm the storyteller, and my stories must be told. I have many stories, tales for both the young and old. I have many voices to describe many places. Many names have I, and many faces. In Russia I am Ivan, in Sweden I am Jan. In Germany I'm Johann, in America I'm John. From my many travels I have gathered these tales to teach you good sense when all else fails. Sometimes there are tears, sometimes there is laughter, but always are happily ever after.
Long ago and far away in a tumble-down cottage on the edge of a forest, there once lived a poor man with his wife and 2 children. This poor man had never known a moment's peace. He worried so much that all his neighbours nicknamed him Weeping Jovan. He and his family were very poor indeed, and they led a miserably hard life. They worked all day from dawn till dusk, and yet they never seemed to make enough money to feed and clothe themselves properly. Life had become a series of unhappy chores. One depressing event followed by another depressing event. Jovan only had to look at his hungry, ragged family and he would start weeping. "Oh, woe is me," he would sigh. "What will happen tomorrow? Will I ever earn enough to look after my family properly?" And indeed, his whole family were also overcome by these fears for the future, for it truly did seem that, however hard they worked, they were never able to rise above the misfortune and bad luck that had dogged them all their lives. His wife and daughter worried about Jovan constantly. They remembered earlier days when he had had pride in his work. He had been poor but proud. Now he was a beaten man. He had given up. No matter how hard he tried, he could make no progress. At the end of a hard day's work, when they were exhausted by their constant toil, there was still never enough for them to eat, and Jovan would miserably wonder what curse lay on him and his wretched family, that they should have to struggle and work so hard for such pitiful returns. More importantly, there was no joy, no smiling, no laughing, only despair. Weeping Jovan was a very conscientious worker. He would go out each day to try and find work in the neighbouring farms. When he obtained such work, he would set to with a will all day, while the other men would take things easy in the village inn. But the trouble was that he always looked so careworn that the farmers hesitated to give him work. Even though he was a good worker, he depressed everyone around. There was something about his sad expression that just put everybody off. So try as he might to please his employers, Weeping Jovan found he was only hired when there was really no one else around to do the work. Life isn't all care and sorrow, and the rich farmers preferred to hire men who, although they were not as steady as Jovan, at least were more cheerful and could appreciate a good joke. So Jovan would be paid and replaced as soon as possible. He protested and complained, but he was considered unlucky. Poor Jovan. What could he do? His sorrows threatened to overcome him completely, and one day matters seemed too much to bear. "Oh, my poor family," he groaned. "Whatever will become of them when I am too old to work any longer? Heaven knows I can just scrape enough to keep body and soul together while I am still young and strong." Jovan was so absorbed with his grief that he didn't hear a carriage come rolling down the road, nor did he even notice that it stopped beside him and that its prosperous-looking passenger sat staring at him in amazement. "My good man," the gentleman exclaimed, "you seem to be carrying the world's sorrows on your shoulders. May I help you in some way?" Jovan recognized the gentleman as the doctor from the next village, a well-known man for his kindness and good works. So Jovan poured out his heart while the doctor listened attentively. When Jovan had got no more than halfway through his tale of woe, the kindly doctor interrupted him. "There, there. Get up from the roadside and come with me, for I can see that if you do not kill worry, worry will shortly kill you." He helped Jovan into the carriage and instructed his coachman to drive home immediately. Jovan settled down in the comfortable carriage, and as they drove along the country path, the doctor exclaimed what a superb day it was, and how lush and fertile the fields were. Who would have thought that out of the stony ground our farmers would be able to grow such crops? Truly the good Lord presents the stones as a challenge, but the harvest is a promise of his bounty. Unmoved, Jovan sat in depressed silence. He observed that as they drove through the village, many people waved and bowed to the doctor, greetings which he always returned with a pleasant smile and a wave of his hand. The carriage drove up to the entrance of a fine house, and the minute they arrived, the servants hurried to welcome their master and his guests. The doctor explained to Jovan that all his wealth was earned because of cooperation, his hard work, combined with all the pleasant people working with him. The doctor led Jovan into a handsome room, heartily declaring, "A good square meal is often better medicine than the most expensive pills. I prescribe a hearty dinner for you, my friend, as the beginning of your cure. Now sit down and be my guest." Despite Jovan's protests, the doctor insisted he sit at the head of the dining table. He began to tell Jovan a little of his past life and how he had had to study for many years in order to qualify as a doctor. He had seen poverty then, and when he qualified, he determined to look after the villagers as best he could. When the servants brought through platter after platter piled high with a variety of food, Jovan thought he had never seen so much luxury. The doctor insisted his guest eat as much as he wanted. He personally served him with all the best cuts, filling his plate time and time again with delicious meats and fish. It was a personal feast presented for a very special guest of honor. Jovan was greatly confused at the doctor's generosity. While Jovan ate his fill of this tasty repast, the doctor continued to tell him of his past life as a poor, hard-working student. He made sure that Jovan's wine glass was never empty. Whether it was the food or the wine or the doctor's cheerful company, it certainly seemed to Jovan that life was beginning to take on a rosier glow. He had never eaten so much or drunk so much wine. "I can see the medicine is having an effect already," the doctor declared. Now, my friend, come with me to the surgery, and I shall endeavour to complete the cure. I have something special I want to show you. There the doctor showed Jovan a portrait of an elderly, distinguished-looking man. This was my father, the doctor explained. He too was once very poor, but by working hard he saved enough to purchase this safeguard against want. And so saying, the doctor took a shining gold ingot from a glass case. When I inherited this gold bar, he continued, I resolved to follow my father's example as best I could, and to try and keep a brave heart and cheerful countenance through all life's misfortunes. I am rich enough now not to need the gold anymore, so let it give you the confidence and hope in the future it has given me. And, he added smiling, remember that weeping should be left to the weak. To Jovan's astonishment, the doctor solemnly wrapped the ingot in a clean white napkin and presented it to him. Jovan's head was spinning as he began the long trip home. He couldn't believe this turn of good fortune. Was he dreaming? No, he was not. The gold ingot was real. He determined that he must be worthy of the doctor's faith in him. He arrived home late that night to find his wife waiting anxiously for him, convinced that all his gloomy fears had now come true and that she would never see him again. She was overjoyed to have her dear husband back safe and sound, but listened in growing astonishment as he told her of the strange events of the day, and finally showed her the white napkin which contained the gold bar. The children woke to hear a voice they recognized as their father's, but which was curiously different. It had a certain ring of happiness. Their eyes nearly popped out of their heads when their mother unwrapped the napkin and they beheld the gold ingot shining in the candlelight. After much discussion and talk, Jovan and his wife agreed that they should follow the doctor's advice and try never to sell the gold, but keep it hidden safely in the cellar. And now, my dear, said Jovan, we too must make a fortune just like the doctor, so that we have something to hand on to our children. From that day, Jovan was a changed man. He went to work with a will. He was always cheerful. Instead of walking around with bowed shoulders, he would stride out with a straight back and head held high. The neighbours couldn't understand what had happened. Jovan's transformation was the talk of the village. Everyone agreed that some astounding good fortune had come his way. Instead of weeping Jovan, he was now known as Lucky Jovan. His first job was to tackle the stony little field he owned. His family, inspired by his example, helped him with a will, carrying away the rocks and stones, ploughing up the clods and preparing the ground. It was very hard work. They worked from dawn till dusk. Whenever Jovan started to flag, he thought of his gold bar, and that gave him renewed strength. Day after day they worked on that stony ground. Day became night, night became day. Surprisingly enough, everyone enjoyed the hard work. The land did flourish like everyone else's, and Jovan was able to grow food for his family and food to sell at the market. Jovan and his family now found themselves in much demand from other farmers. Where previously Jovan had gone begging for work from farm to farm, now he was offered more work than he could cope with. There was just no time to work for others. He and his family were all that mattered. Instead of being objects of pity, Jovan and his wife became people of standing in the village. Others came to them for advice and help. They never forgot their former poverty and were always willing to help the old, the sick, and the unfortunate. No call on their time was ever too much. They vividly remembered how bad life had been in the old days, and they were determined to help share the burden or suffering as much as they could with others. Jovan found that helping others gave him great pleasure, more so than he ever imagined. Their reward was the growing love and respect they enjoyed in the community, and above all, the friends they made. Instead of being something to dread, old age brought them additional pleasure and contentment in seeing everyone around them so happy. Many years later, as Jovan and his wife sat on the porch to enjoy the warmth from the sun's last rays and watch their grandchildren play, they suddenly observed a poor old man dressed in rags stagger down the road. Now, although this beggar was so poorly dressed, there was something about his face and the way he carried himself that indicated he had once known better days. Without hesitation, Jovan hurried down the road and, taking the poor old man gently by the arm, led him to the house where he was made welcome by Jovan's kindly wife. Jovan led him to the table to sit and rest. Jovan listened as the poor beggar poured out his tale of woe, recounting to Jovan how badly treated he had been in the village, and that if Jovan and his wife hadn't taken pity on him, he would surely have starved. Jovan wouldn't listen to any more thanks from the old man. "My friend, I too am indebted to a stranger's kindness," he told him. "I was once as poor as you, and no doubt I still would be if I hadn't been helped in my hour of need. As everything we own is all thanks to just one man, so my wife and I resolved that we too would always help the unfortunate." As the stranger listened in wonder, Jovan recounted the story of the bar of gold and how the good doctor had come to him. He told him about the feast the doctor had given him. He told him the story of the doctor's father. He told him the story of the doctor. Struck by a sudden thought, Jovan hurried into the cellar where the gold bar was kept safely hidden in a secret place. It was still wrapped in the napkin the doctor had used all those years ago. Slowly, Jovan returned to where the old man and his wife sat waiting. Solemnly, he presented it to the beggar, saying, "Take this, my friend. My family has no need of it, for they are all well settled. May it bring you the good fortune it has brought us." The stranger accepted the bar with astonishment and gratitude, but then held it rather dubiously in his hands, as he appeared to weigh it. "My friend," the stranger told the startled Jovan and his wife at last, "this gift is certainly worth all the gold in the world, for it comes freely from 2 generous hearts, but it is not what it seems." Jovan and his wife looked quite nonplussed as the stranger continued, "I have fallen on hard times now, but I was not always like this. I once studied the qualities and properties of all precious metals, and this is too light to be gold. This ancient book tells the tale of an ingot such as yours, one that brings happiness to its owner." He picked up the bar of gold once more and said, "Although this bar has not the weight of true gold, it has been cunningly devised, and I agree would fool most men." He handed it to Jovan's wife and told her to give it a good rub. When she did so, to everyone's astonishment, letters began to reveal themselves on the shining surface. Jovan read, "It is less a matter of want than fear that causes unhappiness. Tread the path of life with courage, and you will always reach the end of your journey." For a long moment, the 3 people stared at the magical inscription, each one thinking his own thoughts. "You have given me a gift worth more than gold," the beggar said. "Through your kindness, I find I have renewed courage to face the future. Instead of dreading the future, I shall go in search of it." He bade the couple farewell and strode off with a new spring in his step and his head held high, just as Jovan had done all those years ago. As for Jovan and his wife, they decided not to keep the bar of gold hidden in the cellar any longer. Instead, they had a handsome glass case made for it, and Jovan's wife took care to dust it every day so that the inscription never again faded from sight.